When trouble happens, there is almost always a victim, and if that happens to be you, would you know where to go to get the help that you need? We've got a solution. Meet Lexi Jackson, the victim's advocate with the Spanish Fork Police Department.
Hi, thank you for having me.
That's kind of a mouthful.
Yes. Thank you for having me here.
So, go ahead.
Well, tell us about just a little bit about what you do and like the program that you're involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. So about 8 years ago, Spanish Fork, our chief, approved for a victim services program here at our police department. And so I replaced our previous advocate, who did an amazing job, left some very big shoes for me to fill. But we serve any victims of crime, so really any type of crime, but mostly we focus on domestic violence and sexual assault, and we work with survivors who have gone through that and help them navigate where to go and how to begin their healing journey.
Wow. So do you help them find services? So if there's a woman that comes to you or is being abused, she needs to get away, how do you help her? Like, what do you say to her, I guess, for an example?
Absolutely. So what I do is I work closely with our detectives and our officers, and so that's how I get the original calls. So if someone calls to report a crime, I will respond either in person to the scene or make contact with the survivor afterwards, and we do a needs assessment. We figure out what their needs are, what their safety concerns are, and it's very survivor-led. So they get to tell me what they need and how I can support them, and then I connect them based on their answers. And so sometimes that's housing, sometimes that's mental health support, sometimes it's just addressing the barriers that they need to get out of an abusive relationship. And so I work really closely with them, and then if it gets to the point where it does go to court, I work with them to help navigate the court process as well.
Wow, what sort of a degree or schooling or education did you go through?
Yeah.
It just seems like you're so knowledgeable and it encompasses so much.
Yeah. There is quite a bit of training that goes into it. Currently in Utah, there are some debates on what schooling is required, but I chose to get a bachelor's degree in psychology, and then I will probably go in a few years to get a master's degree in social work. But that's kind of my background, and I've worked a little bit in the field with Wasatch Behavioral Health prior to this, but I knew that victim services is the field that I wanted to go into, and so with my education, I also completed different trainings required by the state of Utah to help serve survivors of domestic violence, and then another training for serving survivors of sexual assault as well.
How long have you been helping then in Spanish Fork?
I got hired at the end of January of this year, so not too long, but I'm happy to be here.
But you got your feet wet and now you're going. So I know that I visited one of the women's shelters a few months ago, and one of the ladies there told me that they have to turn away a lot of women who are abused. So how do you help them if there's not room in some shelters? I know sometimes that can be a challenge. I don't know if you've seen that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of barriers to accessing services. There's some therapy organizations that are really great, but they only take certain insurances. Or if a survivor is leaving an abusive situation, oftentimes financial control is one of their barriers. They don't have access to money, they don't have access to transportation, they don't have access to their insurance cards or necessary documents to receive help. And so when we do the needs assessment, we figure out how can we get those documents back for them? How can we enroll them in some type of insurance to help them get care? And so where our shelters are an amazing resource and they do a great job of trying to get people in when needed, it's good to always have a backup plan. And so we coordinate to make sure that we have a few different options in case one falls through. That way that they're not just on their own.
Perfect, that's awesome.
I imagine it seems like such a hard thing to see someone going through that and you just want to help them. Is there a lot of people that maybe don't want the help or is scared to take that step?
Definitely, yeah. I think it goes back to some of those barriers to leaving. It's scary to talk to law enforcement. I won't sugarcoat that. It's scary to talk to an officer and tell them the things that you've been through, and oftentimes survivors will carry a lot of shame with that, or they don't want to rehash these traumatic things that they've experienced. And so those are definitely some of the barriers that people face when they are trying to seek help and decide how they want to go about doing that. And then sometimes they are in that domestic violence cycle where they're not ready to leave, or it may not be safe for them to leave yet. And so the main thing that I just want people to know is that I'm here for them regardless. If they choose to stay in the relationship, I want them to know that they're not alone, and that I will help safety plan with them, so that way they can have a support system and have resources to keep themselves safe even if they are staying in the relationship.
And sometimes just knowing that, having them knowing that they have a support, and building that, that trust with you, sort of
feel like, a foundation to maybe build up to it.
Yeah, then maybe those are part of like steps so that they can one day leave like, okay, I can rely on her, she's gonna help me. So how many cases do you have? Like what does the workload look like for you?
Yeah, so from the beginning of the year till now, I have about 110 cases. Not all of them are active right now. Some of them, their court cases have been closed. But I would say I work on about 50 active cases at a time.
Wow.
Goodness.
How do you juggle that?
I have a lot of great support at our police department. We've got great community advocates that help. I work closely with our prosecutor, our detectives, our officers, and even our front staff ladies are so helpful to help figure out, what appointments need to be made and helping me contact people. So it's been really great.
Do you have to have an officer with you when you go into a situation, or how does that look like?
We typically safety plan with our officers, and so if it's a situation where I know that the offender isn't in the home and it's just going to be me and the survivor, I'll usually just tell someone my location and then they're on standby if I need them. But if it is a situation where I'm a little more nervous, I may have officers respond with me. So it's usually a case-by-case situation.
Such a good teamwork situation.
Dare I ask, how often do those cases involve children?
Often. Unfortunately, specifically with domestic violence, the children are often present, they're often involved in one way or another. And so we do see that a lot, where we have to not only think of the survivor as the adult, but also their children as well, and factor them in and make sure that they are safe and taken care of, and also have the mental health resources, because it does take a toll on them as well.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, what can we do as a community? Is there action items that we can do or help in any way?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for asking. So what I always recommend is start by believing. So if someone comes up to you, if it's a family, a friend, the odds are someone you know has gone through this. And so if someone does come up to you and shares their story with you, just acknowledge that, one, it takes a lot of courage to come forward with that, and two, the amount of false reports are very low. And so it's more likely that they're telling the truth and that they are trusting you with a really difficult part of their story. And so just believing them and helping them connect to these resources is a great idea. And then also donating to local organizations. We have the Refuge in Orem. They are a great option to donate and to contribute to as well. They do a lot of great work, and they go above and beyond for our survivors.
Is it mainly just women, or are there men that you're working with too? I think a lot of times we feel domestic violence is against women, which may be a high percentage, but does it go both ways?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, statistically, I work mainly with women, but I work with people of all kinds, any gender, any race, anything like that, because unfortunately abuse doesn't target just one population. It goes, and anyone can be a victim and anyone can survive this. So I'm happy to work with anyone who needs my services.
What about a success story that you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a few where we've had protective orders granted. I think of one in mind where we had it granted so that way this survivor was pregnant at the time, and the offender unfortunately was the father of the child, and the abuse happened while she was pregnant, and so we needed a protective order, and we needed to get her out of the home and be able to safely deliver her baby with the peace of her family and people that she could trust. And so with the help of our department, we were able to quickly put a protective order together and safety plan with her, so that way she could go to the hospital and be safe and be able to deliver her baby. And then thanks to donations from our community, actually, we were able to put together a little care package for her, so that way she could feel the support from our department and have, a soft blanket and a stuffed animal to provide a little bit of comfort as she was going through this.
How long does it take to get a protective order? Like what's timeline look like if somebody was thinking
Needing
or hoping that to happen that?
It kind of depends case by case. Typically, if someone's like arrested, they'll see a judge pretty quickly, so within a couple days. And in that case, we can try to get a protective order pretty quickly. The main thing is just to get them to safety as quickly as possible. And so sometimes there are certain protective orders that take longer to get, but I can usually work with the individual to figure out what safety measures we need to put in place to keep them the safest at that time. And sometimes that's not even a protective order. Sometimes it's safety planning and finding a new location to stay or
That
transportation.
maybe the perpetrator or whatever, whoever you call them, that they wouldn't know about.
Right.
Like maybe it's a coworker or something where he wouldn't know where they are.
Absolutely. And so typically we're able to get them to safety pretty quickly.
So beyond outreach to the police department, is there an app or something else that we can refer them to?
I would refer them to the Refuges hotline. So you can find that online or at their website. They're just called The Refuge. They're located in Orem. They have a main line, they have a domestic violence hotline, and a sexual assault hotline. Both of those are available for English and Spanish speakers, and they are open 24/7, no cost. So it's a great resource for anyone who is looking to seek help.
Wow. Thank you so much. It sounds like you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Beautiful work. Thank you.